So it's no secret by now that I really like Quidditch, and I have a couple collectibles from it, but I noticed there's one that no one sells a replica of, and that's the bat the beaters use to throw bludgers at each other. So I decided to make my own, and I'm going to show you how I did it. So the first thing we're going to need is a bat. This is a 16-inch club I got off of Amazon. A link will be in the description below. We're going to need to stain this thing, but first you can see there's a coating already on the bat, so that means lots of sanding. I started with a 120 grit and worked my way up to a 300 something grit, basically just until it was smooth again, so just be sure to remove all of that coating before proceeding. So since there's going to be basically a band of metal right here and down here, it's a very small section where you would actually be able to see any damage or weathering on there, so you can skip this part. Really, it's just up to you how worn you want it to look. Now that it's sanded and weathered, it's time to stain. This is the type of wood stain I chose to go with, and you're just going to apply this all over the club. You're going to probably have to do several coats. I believe I did about 3 coats of this, which it takes a while to dry, so it's going to be a process. To make sure the stain didn't get ruined, if I had to set the bat down for it to dry, I decided to tie some twine or some string around the bat and hang it on a hook so that it wouldn't be touching anything while it was drying. Before we continue, I just want to remind you guys about some giveaways. So I'm giving away a 2023 Collector's Edition wand when I hit 50 subscribers on YouTube, a different 2023 Collector's Edition wand when I hit 50 followers on Twitch, a cup of Hufflepuff from Noble Collection when I hit 50 followers on TikTok, which we are really close to hitting that goal. And then finally, once all of those platforms each get 100 followers, I'm giving away a Sorcerer's Stone also from Noble Collection. So if any of that interests you, now you know. After the stain is all dry, I then applied this antiquing glaze to act as a finish on the bat. Here you can see how it turned out, and it's pretty close to matching the first bat I made, so pretty happy about that. But now we need to add the finishing touches, starting with the metal bits. So to do this part, I actually use aluminum tape. I do this so it'll maintain the texture of metal and kind of the feel. So we're going to add 2 strips to do the main big chunk of metal, and then we're going to be cutting a small strip in half to do the lower metal ring around the bat. Once you finish, you should have something that looks like this. So from here, we're going to start actually painting the metal parts of the bat. To do this, we're going to start with a dark base coat that's going to use a base of black with a little bit of brown and some copper paint mixed into it. I'll show you me doing that. Hopefully the camera catches it. If not, I'll explain it a bit more in depth. But the important thing is to be very careful during this process, because you're painting on metal, the paint isn't going to really bond or adhere to it, so it's going to be really easy to scratch off. Don't worry, we're going to fix that later with some Mod Podge. So it basically should be a pretty dark brown with just a little hint of metallic. We still want it to look like metal, but not super shiny. It needs to be aged, weathered, and worn down. When applying this stuff, you want to put it on kind of thick, otherwise you're going to have to go back over spots and do a couple of coats, and every time you do that, you may end up scratching it, and then you just have to go back over it an additional time. Again, just be careful. The paint is really easy to scratch. Once that's all dry, you're going to notice that it looks really flat, and we're going to fix this using dry brushing. So we're going to take a brush and use some antique copper paint and gently dry brush it over the surface of this. It's going to make the highlights come back and pop, make it look more aged and weathered, most importantly make it look more like metal. Again, be careful during this, it's still easy to scratch. It should look something like this once you're done with all the dry brushing. Again, it really just brings the highlights back and starts to make it look more like metal again, which is what we're going for. And thanks to all the texture from using aluminum tape, it also has the texture of metal. You'll also notice that the dark spots are still looking rather flat. I'm kind of 50-50 on whether I like that or not. The ones I have done, I've gone over in gloss Mod Podge, and that makes the whole thing shiny again, and so that's what I'll be doing. You can use matte Mod Podge, but then the shininess of the dry brushing you did will be flat. Like I just said, I'll be using the glossy Mod Podge, so that way everything kind of gets a shine back to it. And the reason to do this is it seals the paint. So even though the paint won't actually bond to the metal you put it on, this will seal everything so that way it can't be scratched, or at least is more scratch resistant. It's just a lot harder to get the paint off of it after you do this step. So it acts as a final coat and a protective layer. Alright, on to the final step, the actual wrapping on the bat. So for the wrapping, I actually just used white duct tape. This tape is actually the Scotch tape brand version of duct tape. It just seemed a little thinner, which kind of seemed right. I don't know why. But you're going to just take a length of this and then cut it in half. Then once you have your half strip of tape, you're going to grab your bat and start to wrap it around the handle. To do this, I go around the base of it once straight and then start to slowly wind it up the bat. And then once I get to the other endpoint, I go over a couple of times just in a straight line. That way the two endpoints are distinguishable. Now to actually weather the wrapping on the bat, I just use brown paint and a paper towel, and I just kind of apply it all over the duct tape. So just like with the metal, the paint actually doesn't bond to the duct tape very well, so it is very easy to remove, and we're actually going to be using that to our advantage this time. So we're going to go over it very lightly, and then with a dry paper towel, kind of remove some of the paint material on the wrapping, just to kind of give it a really dirty look to it, like it's been used quite often. After this, we're going to go over it in matte Mod Podge to again seal it to make sure that there's a protective layer. And the key with this is to remove some of the paint material, but not too much. It's kind of a really fine balance. You just kind of want to take some off, and then if you're not satisfied with how much is left, reapply, rinse and repeat until you feel that you've got it just right. Of course, after the paint is dry, remember to go over it in the matte Mod Podge. We're doing matte because we don't want this area of the bat to be very shiny. And be sure to coat the entirety of the wrapping. Don't be too afraid about getting any on the bat. You can just wipe it off before it dries. And there you go. You've got a prop beater bat that can be used for display or decoration purposes, or even for photo shoots or cosplay or something like that. I'm pretty happy with the way they came out, especially for the few materials used to make the bat. Thank you guys for watching the video. I hope it helped you guys. Reminder that Harry Potter Quidditch Champions is coming out September 3rd, and I plan to do a whole bunch of videos on it. I was actually able to get into the play tests for all of them, and I'm going to be posting all of the tips and tricks I learned about the game when the game releases on September 3rd. So be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on that. Thanks.